Welcome back to Wake Up, We the People. It's time to be strong.
Wake Up, We the People welcomes Tom Corbin, state senator from South Carolina, and Mike Pitts, House of Representatives there as well. Hello, Tom.
Hello, George. Nice to be with you.
And hello, Mike.
How are you?
Great to have you with us. Really appreciate your dedication to the Second Amendment in South Carolina and what you're doing, because states' rights gives us this power, and we need to stand up against this kind of unwarranted kind of legislation, even tyranny coming out of Washington, D.C. these days concerning a whole lot of things. But here we are facing, just last week, President Obama put up something like 23 new restrictions. Of course, with his executive orders, he thinks that somehow is constitutional. But let's start, Tom, let's start with you. Give us a little background on the thinking and why you're doing what you're doing.
Okay, thank you, George. Mike and I have been working on this for quite some time. It wasn't any sort of knee-jerk reaction to anything that recently happened in the media or to these executive orders. Every few years, a horrific event happens where lives are lost and there's a gun or a weapon involved. And it seems like every time that happens, the federal government wants to curtail our Second Amendment rights. And that's troubled Representative Pitts and myself and many others for quite some time. And we have been discussing something like this for since, I guess, the end of last session. And I also want to thank a gentleman who lives back in my district by the name of Craig Skelton. He actually sort of gave me the idea. He and I were talking about it one day, and he jokingly made the comment, well, you should put us just all in the militia. And that got me to thinking that our state does have a militia, and that sort of sent me down the path to begin researching this bill. And that's the way it ended up with the way this bill is the bill basically defines the armament of our state unorganized militia.
Well, Mike, we all know that in the Second Amendment it talks about a well-regulated militia, of course, being necessary to the security of a free state, but most people don't understand that first phrase of the Second Amendment.
No, they don't, and this goes. My line of thought on this particular bill follows my entire line of thought on the freedoms that we're losing on all levels, not just federal level, but state and local level, our individual liberties, and how easily it seems that people want to give them up. But about 3 or 4 years ago, now Congressman Jeff Duncan, who represents the 3rd District here in South Carolina, was my seatmate in the House. And we were looking at a way to combat erosion of the Second Amendment. And I told Jeff the whole issue with antis revolve around the militia, the term militia. They say that this gives us the ability to have a National Guard. Then they'll say, well, it's militia means not individual liberty under the Second Amendment, et cetera, et cetera. And we started out with the idea of naming our concealed weapons permit list as the well-regulated militia. and that way it is supervised, it is trained, and there was no way that the antis could have come up with an argument in opposition to that. But in talking with Tom came up with a better idea, which was that we do have militia termed in our Constitution. And,
that's right.
And Tom's idea took that 2 steps further and made it a much, much better idea.
Well, most people, again, because they don't understand the militia, a well-regulated militia, of course, you say the militia word often today, and you're right away categorized as some whack job, some vigilante type person, or don't understand that pre-revolution and post-revolution, of course, the well-regulated militia was everyone. In fact, gun control back then was that everybody had to have a gun.
Well, a well-regulated militia was the Minutemen that fell out
right.
With the most modern firearms of their time and faced the Redcoats at Concord and Lexington. We know what happened.
Go ahead, Tom.
That's exactly right. In our state, we have what we call, and I'll read from Chapter 1 of the Military Code, Article 1, General Provisions. If you would permit me, the National Guard shall be understood to include the organized militia, both Army and Air. In Section 19, it discusses the organized militia, refers to both the National Guard and the organized militia, not in the National Guard service. Individuals who are federally recognized by the National Guard Bureau are members of the National Guard. Individuals holding rank or privilege within the military department, but not federally recognized in the ranks for service in the National Guard, are the organized militia. And then we have, that is also referred to as the state defense forces of the state guard. Then under current law, the term unorganized militia is any person that meets the below criteria, is in the unorganized militia. And that is any able-bodied person over the age of 17 years of age who are citizens of the United States residing within this state.
And legally allowed to purchase a firearm, I see, according to that law.
Yes, this I was reading from the old law, which basically outlines the that outlines the three different types of militia that were currently existing in our state. Now, what my bill does, and Mike and I's bill, what our bill does is it defines the weaponry of that unorganized militia, which is basically everyone over the age of 17. And I thought that it was a good idea since it had never been done. And I'll just read the bill briefly here to you. It's very short.
Please.
It's a short one-page bill. It's very comprehensive, but it is precise and to the point. Section 1, Article 1, Chapter 1, Title 25 of the Code, Section 25-1-80A. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 25-160, an able-bodied citizen of the state who is over 17 years of age and can legally purchase a firearm is deemed a member of the South Carolina unorganized militia, unless he is already a member of the National Guard or organized militia, not in the Guard service. Section B states the unorganized militia, which is what this bill deals with, will be under the supervision of the governor as commander-in-chief and the adjutant general, and shall be regulated through the actions of our General Assembly. The powers and duties of the South Carolina unorganized militia include, 1, the militia may be ordered to active duty pursuant to the provisions of Section 25-1-1890. A militia member at his own expense shall have the right to possess and keep all arms that could legally be acquired or possessed by a South Carolina citizen as of December 31st, 2012. And, George, I just picked that date at random. I could have picked today. I could have picked 2 years ago, but we needed to give it a finality. And this includes shouldered rifles, shotguns, handguns, clips, magazines, and all components. Section 3 reads, the unorganized militia may not fall under any law or regulation or jurisdiction of any person or entity outside of South Carolina. And the final paragraph, basically one sentence says, a member may resign at any time from the unorganized militia, at which time he will resume his civilian status. As I said, it's a very short and concise bill, but what that does is it sets the parameters for what our weaponry is, and it just codifies it in law.
So, plainly put, it exempts the members of the unorganized militia from any attempts by the federal government to take away whatever they are trying to do.
Exactly, and that was what. And the unique thing about this bill, and Mike will tell you because we've discussed it at length. We're not asking for. This doesn't say anything about competitiveness between the National Guard or the organized militia. It doesn't ask for automatic weapons, things that they carry. It doesn't ask for rocket launchers or flamethrowers or things like that. Basically, it says that that this militia is entitled to keep and possess all the arms that are legal, if they are legally able to keep and possess as of the end of last year. And as you both know, if it hadn't been for the tragedy in Sandy Hook, we probably wouldn't even be having this discussion. However, incidents like this do give rise to let us go in and codify our laws and determine what needs to take place, in other words, to settle it for good.
Mike, how do you think this will fare in the House?
I think it will do well in the House. It will run into resistance, primarily from Democrats. The Democrats, led by the Black Caucus, will take it as an affront directly to Obama's executive orders and create a fight. But I think the majority of the House will support it strongly.
What do you think, Mike? Do you think something like this will be taken to the courts?
I'm not sure whether it would be taken to the courts or not. I think the courts are going to be full of other 10th Amendment issues, and I don't know that this one would be there. Although I've been trying for a decade now to challenge on 10th Amendment issues in the court system. On immigration, I had a bill in 2008 that would have put us as South Carolina legislature where Arizona ended up had we been able to pass it. So not really afraid of going to the courts on the issue.
So have you counted votes in the House?
No, but I have counted consistently Second Amendment votes and 10th Amendment votes, and we win by an overwhelming majority on those issues every time they come up. You know, we had I filed the bill in the House, I believe 2 sessions back, 3 or 4 years ago, the Firearms Freedom Act. And I actually had it moving in the House of Representatives until they figured out that the M16's made in Lexington, South Carolina.
Keep it within. If it sells within the state, it's legal, right?
If it's manufactured, sold...
Yeah, manufactured and sold, right.
Within the boundaries of the state and do not leave the state, it's not subject to interstate commerce.
Tom, how do you think this will fare in the Senate? Have you counted votes?
Well, I have not. The Senate, of course, in South Carolina is a horse of a different color. I had the pleasure of serving in the House with Representative Pitts last session, and got to know him very well. And I just like to take this moment to say he is an outstanding representative, and as much of a patriot and a person that loves this country as anybody that I have ever seen. To answer your question, it will be more difficult to get it through the Senate than it will be the House, and that's just my gut feeling. It's our rules of our Senate often allow for extended periods of filibuster. And so it will be more difficult. I believe we can get it through. I believe in my heart we can get it through. I never file a bill just to get any sort of publicity out of it. When I file a bill, my intent is to get it passed into legislation, and that's what I'm going to work towards. I had hoped that it would go to our Judiciary Committee in the Senate. However, it got put in the General Committee. I have spoken with the senator who is chairman of the General Committee, Senator O'Dell, who's a Republican, and he assured me that he would set up a subcommittee and have a hearing on it, and that is step one. So we'll just have to take it from there. I'm hoping and praying we can get it through, but we'll just have to take it step at a time, and I'll be behind it, pushing it all the way.
Well, give him this quote from our founding father, George Mason. He said this, quote, that the people have a right to mass and to bear arms, that a well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people trained to arms is the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state. So you can't say it much better than that.
That's correct.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for being with us on Wake Up, We the People. Really appreciate all that you're doing. Stay focused, and we'll keep in touch to see how this all turns out.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We thank you, Mike Pitts. He is a member of the House of Representatives in South Carolina. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
And Tom, thank you so much.
Thank you, George. Thank you for having us on.
Tom Corbin, State Senator in the great state of South Carolina. A prominent Georgetown law professor says, quote, "I've got a simple idea. Let's give up on the Constitution. I know it sounds radical, but it's really not." Constitutional Chris Ann Hall, an attorney, joins us next on Wake Up, We the People.